So I got an exciting one today. I'm going to do a recap of the 1K showdown I did over at Red Seal Gaming. As you can see in the top left there, I did earn the trophy. I came in first, won the showdown. This was an awesome event. Shout out to the location, Red Seal Gaming. It was a really nice store. Everyone there was great. It's over in Matawan, New Jersey for anyone that wants to check it out. The prizes listed there, that's kind of what the event ad was for. His first place was 500, second 250, third was, and fourth were 125, fifth through eighth each got 50, and then in addition to that, they threw in some packs, and then naturally the Mace Windu promos. So I took this event down. I ran Krennic Green for this one. This video is going to be a discussion about the tournament itself, and then a bit about the deck and kind of why I built it the way I did. It's not going to be as much of like a pure deck tech as some of my other videos, but there is going to be some deck techy sort of discussions there. Before we get to it though, shout out to these fellas. This is my testing team. I test with KTOD. This is the t-shirt I got. Everyone here is extremely helpful in getting me prepped for this event, both with actual gameplay and like just hype value and moral support. It's a great crew, and over at their Discord they offer a ton of great competitive value, and we do a lot of like game stuff there. I sometimes stream in there. All these guys do tremendous work, and they were very helpful in getting me ready for this 1K. All right, so why Krennic Green? Why did I pick this for a major event? Well, when you're going into a big event, this is a 44 person, so it's not like massive, but with a big prize pool, I typically will lean towards a deck that has a wide variety of good matchups and not too many matchups that are really, really bad. So like last week at a smaller event, I decided to go with Palp Blue, which does have like some really bad matchups, specifically like any Sabine deck just walks over Palp. So it wasn't really something I was gonna run into like a big major. Krennic Green I think has a much wider range of good matchups, especially into the decks that I think are really popular. I think he's favored into like the Boba, all Boba varieties. I think has even matchups into Sabine decks and can get even better the more you dedicate main deck sideboard for that matchup. I think he's favored into all the hard control. I know those matchups, they feel pretty silly sometimes, but any deck that gets to play 3 Relentless, I think straight up is just favored in that matchup. As long as you know the lines, know it's important. I'll talk about that a little later. That was actually the final matchup, was into a Boba Blue hard control deck. Other than that, like I've typically spoken pretty highly of Iden Green. The reason I opted for Krennic in this particular case is because I think he has a slightly better matchup into the mono yellow Boba and the Sabine yellow versus the ECL versions of both those decks. Against mono yellow Boba, since you are an ECL steadfast deck and you are almost certainly going to ramp against them, you actually are a step ahead in that game plan. And against Sabine Yellow, the fact that your Consortium Star Viper can ambush a space unit and leave behind a 4-power unit presents a problem for their strongest follow-up plays, which are often Millennium Falcon. Having a 4-power space unit left over means that that Falcon can't just come in, kill your Star Viper, and then present threats next turn as it could against an Iden deck. That's kind of why I decided on Krennic. I think against like the control matchups, it would be pretty similar overall. Against a lot of matchups, the decks are built pretty close together. So I think Iden Green is also a fantastic choice, but that's why I went with Krennic. All right. So this was the this is going to be the tournament recap. So in the Swiss, I went 6-0. Round 1 was against a Vader Green. She lost the first game against him, and doesn't feel great to lose your first game in a tournament, but I was able to claw back 2-1. He kind of had a really awkward hand in game 3 where he just didn't draw enough units, and knew I had a power of the dark side in my hand, and he just like had to spend his 7 resource turn doing basically nothing because he had no units to play, so he couldn't even deploy. And from there, I kind of was able to seal that game 3. I think most of the time, I do not like playing against Vader Green with the blue-green control decks. I think they are pretty well positioned, but you are certainly able to steal some games from them. Round 2 was against a Palpatine Yellow. I think against Palpatine Blue, Krennic Green is a pretty big dog because they're kind of the same deck, except they have a much more impactful leader. Against Yellow, often your blue stuff can tilt this matchup, like having Super Laser Blast and Avengers on our cards they need to leverage Change of Heart. The key to playing against a Palpatine deck, especially with a deck like Krennic, is to kill all their units so they can never draw cards. I was using Overwhelming Barrage to kill a current, your Lauren, for instance. I would just, removal, delete their cards. Don't let them throw them at your unit. Don't let them filter through their deck. I think in 2 games, he drew maybe 1 or 2 cards off of his Palpatine ability, was able to keep our card quantity very similar. And because I had what I think was a bigger top end with Avengers and Super Laser Blast, I was able to take that. Round 3 was a Sabine Green. These are tough matchups often, but we got a lot of heal, played 3 Vigilance. Sideboard had some help too, so I was able to take that. Han Green in round 4. I feel like Krennic is pretty favored in this matchup. Spark is definitely the most difficult card to maneuver if they rip it really important cards out of your hand. I actually had a Super Laser Tech to Traitorist in game 1, but I was still able to win that matchup. And had another Sabine Green in round 5. This one, I was able to both games sequence in such a way that his Sabine flip was not able to do much, either because I had ramped and was able to one-shot it with a Gideon, or the board was clear and he had to either play a 4-drop into removal or a Sabine into removal. Those games ran pretty smoothly. Last round was against a Boba Yellow. At this point, I was the only undefeated player, so this was actually a pair down for me. I feel favored into Boba. It's kind of the whole reason not the whole reason, but a main reason why I think Krennic Green is a really well-positioned deck right now with how popular Boba is. Although it is the only normal Boba deck I played. I did play a Boba in the finals, but that was the hard control Boba Blue. So I did not play another Boba Yellow or another Boba Green in this tournament. There were definitely some floating around, but none of them actually made the top 8. So the top 8 listed on the right there. It's Krennic Green, that was the number 1 seed. Then there was Han Green, the Boba Blue. Then another Han Green, the one that I had played in round 4. Mono Blue Krennic, and this was not a hard control mill Krennic Blue. This was kind of a mid-rangey Krennic Blue. I don't know the exact list, but I did speak with the person briefly, and he said he was not playing the hard control Iden Blue, no unit deck. He did have a lot of units. It was probably closer to the Krennic Green decks, just with different top ends and no ramp. Number 6 was a Sabine Green, the one from round 5. And then 7 and 8 rounded it out. 2 more Krennic Greens. And I had to go through both of them in the top 8, 2-1 in both those matchups. I know it was reseeded after the first match of the top 8. So normally in a bracket tournament, first seed plays 8, and then the winner of that game will play the winner between the 4th and 5th bracket. But here, after the first round was over, the seeding was redone, and since the 7th seed did beat the 2 seed, I ended up playing him. I do have a memorable moment of the first game into that second Krennic Green matchup. We had both ramped equally. I played my first Vader, and I looked at the 10 cards, and I had 2 Avengers, a Devastator, Relentless, and a Reinforcement Walker among them. Now that's 5 of the 6 top-end cards I played. The only one left in the deck was another Reinforcement Walker, which actually was already in my hand. So I knew from that moment on there was just no way I was going to win a long game, because 5... all my capital ships and my extra Reinforcement Walker were all in the bottom of my deck. So I had to try to aggro. I got him down to 22 life on base, but he's able to stabilize, and there was just nothing I could do because I was never going to draw a finisher after that. And then Boba Blue in the finals. In game 1, I think the Boba Blue / I have Mono Blue Idens or Vader blue, like the hard control, super laser blast based decks with restock. In game one, I think they have a much better shot into this Krennic Green. I only play one Relentless in the main deck, but I do have a Devastator in the main deck and some other ships. I was able to put enough pressure in this game, spoke to my opponent after, and he kind of regretted a turn where he attacked his Boba leader to kill my 7-power Gideon, which they ended up trading. So because of that, Boba didn't actually ready any resources that turn, did not complete his attack. And opponent said that he felt like that set him back in that matchup. I was able to just push a ton of damage that game. Adel Miko was able to delay a super laser blast turn, which let me push 13 to 14 damage in one turn. From then on, he had to always use vigilances to heal. He was never able to mill me. And as such, he was never able to mill my Relentless, which I did eventually draw, and it did lock out the game. Post board, I think, honestly, the blue-green decks are pretty substantially favored. I had 3 Relentlesses, 2 Devastators, 2 Avengers, 2 Emperor's Legion. I just feel like there's just no way that that deck can, I mean, not that there's no way, but it's very hard for them to get through all of that meat. In game 2, I actually triple ramped. I had a Relentless out when he was still at 6 resources. There was just nothing that was ever going to be done at that point. It's a very great event. Everyone played well. Like, I think this was challenging. It was sweaty. Like, I was nervous a lot. That's something I need to work on. But yeah, it was a lot of fun. And now, the deck. So here we go. Krennic Green. Oh, let me hide this. All right, so this is the list I ran. It's a little bit more top heavy than some Krennics because I wanted to be a little more prepared for mirrors, which I think served me well. I'm playing 10 2-drops. I think the core ones are the 3 regional governors and the 3 Viper probes. Like, probe is your best friend into Sabine. That in my opening hand for a couple, maybe 2 or 3 of the Sabine games, my opponent had to start ground, and I was able to match it with a probe. It just feels so good to be able to trade with their first turn play. Regional Governor, I think, is really core into any of the control mirrors, especially into the hard control stuff. It being a 1/4 is also not terrible. It means it doesn't get like one shot by aggro units, so you're able to attack with it and turn it into a 2-power unit. It's kind of the same reason I play the Storm Bikes over something like Seasoned Shore Trooper, although I think there is an argument for Shore Trooper. It's just that Storm Bike can kill a Greedo and survive, and then it still takes 2 attacks with it to kill things like Battlefield Marine, Sabine unit, basically anything else, right? So the Shore Trooper's upside is that late in the game, coming out of a Vader, you present a real threat, but I prefer the early game use of the Shore Trooper. And then Inferno Forth, I consider this a flex spot too. I was for a while not playing it at all. I was playing Seasoned Shore Trooper in that slot. I decided to play the Inferno Force because I added devotions to my sideboard, and I think it carries them well in aggro matchups. Death Trooper is core, especially in Krennic, where it can leave behind a 4-power unit. That was tremendously valuable. Like, there was a turn into Vader Green actually in that 3rd game where it was able to set up a double kill into a 5th brother and a Viper probe because of the ambush, allowing it to attack for 4. That's kind of how I was able to lock him from deploying because he had no units in play. And then, yeah, it's just good into aggro, especially when it leaves behind a 4-power unit. I was able to kill a Dodonna with it in an ambush. Additionally, off of Vader, it's almost always the best card to pull with him. Del Miko, All-Star. I know the card doesn't seem that great, but that event tax in any of the control stuff is very impactful. It can also delay ramp sometimes in matchups where you're playing against resupply. It's like the restore is not irrelevant when you pull it off of a Vader. It's just a pretty well-rounded card. I'm playing it over where you often see Cell Block Guard. Power of Darkside core, I don't need to talk about that. Super Laser Tech and Resupply core. I know some lists play 2 Resupply. I gotta say, I want to ramp against everyone except Sabine on turn 2 every single game. I do not want to trim this. Even against Sabine, I think sometimes you can justify playing a resupply on turn 2 if your turn 3 can be like Krennic, Gideon, ambush. you can like really catch up after that, especially if you can follow that turn up with a barrage. Takedown, I think, is actually probably like the weakest removal right now, but it still serves too much of a purpose, being able to kill things like Sabine, K2, 7th Fleet Defender, damaged, like if you super laser tech into a Boba Fett, right? This can finish off that leader. I don't love the card, but it has enough wide range application. As far as the 5 drops, I went with 1 Gideon, 2 Steadfast. I know often when these lists play 4 of them, I opted for an extra capital ship instead. I think it worked out pretty well. I actually don't really like Steadfast. I don't think I one time in any matchup, even against like Krennic's, Han's, the one Boba I played, I don't think I ever did the like Steadfast ambush for 7 play. I almost always prefer to ambush with Gideon and leave behind experience, unless of course you need that 7 ambush. The threat of it is always there, and people play around it so much that like I was just resourcing it. Like I played against a Krennic, then I had it in my hand, and I actually just like resourced it, and he deployed the Krennic into me, and I was actually kind of bummed that I had resourced it. But I think you still gotta play the Steadfasts, but I don't love it. Vanquish, important right now. I think there's enough big things, fire sprays in mirror matches, it's important. Barrage, we don't need to get into Barrage. We don't need to get into Darth Vader either. 1 main deck Super Laser Blast. This is like a catch-all, especially for like Palpatine and Vader matchups. That's kind of why I have it in the main deck and a second in the sideboard. I feel like those matchups are pretty bad without a Super Laser Blast to kind of put you back in the game. And then my top end. So 2 Reinforcement Walkers is almost always what I see in these decks. Usually I also see 2 Avengers. I play a main deck Relentless because of the control, like the hard control decks. I want an out. It's an absolute beating against those decks. Relentless was my best friend today, or not today, yesterday. Love it. I play 3 total in the 60. And I added 1 Devastator to the main deck to, one up anyone playing control. I wanted 1 extra big thing, and that was nice. It was nice to have. It also like came in handy against like Han. Pretty good card. Sideboard, most of it is for the hard control matchup. The 2 Emperor's Legion, the 2 Relentless, and the Devastator. That all comes in there. That all also comes in against like a Krennic Mirror, where I'll also throw in the Super Laser Blast. And like the Blast, I was also bringing in against Boba. Would bring it in against like Vader and Palpatine. And then the make-in openings are for Sabine and Boba. Primarily Boba to kill 7th Fleet Defender. The game I lost against Mono Yellow Boba was because he went turn 2, turn 3, 7th Fleet Defender. That card is so annoying because it blocks the barrage. The takedown is a trade down, right? You kind of just need vigilance, but if you're spending 6 and they like follow up with a fire spray, it's just deadly. Make an opening is really nice there, and then has like some decent help into Sabine. And Devotion is entirely for Sabine. It's just a good card there, being able to turn Krennic into a heal 4. I had a matchup where I had 2 of these on a Consortium Star Viper. It was like it healed for 6 and then 4 and then 4 and then 6 again or something wild. It was helpful. So yeah, like I think this deck is incredibly well positioned right now. I think blue-green in general is very well positioned right now. It doesn't have very many bad matchups. I did mention like the Vader green mid-range is typically pretty hard for this deck. But do play enough big stuff and 2 Super Laser Blast post board to hopefully be able to tilt that. Palpatine as well, especially the blue version, is basically just your deck on steroids. You need to try to keep them from drawing cards as much as possible. And if you can get ahead to force them into a bad flip turn and you have a Super Laser Blast, that's kind of how you can like even the score, and then it comes down to who draws or plays more big things. In all these matchups and like in mirrors, it's all about ramp. Like I would look at my hand against like these Krennic Greens that I played in the opening. I did not look for a single card in there that wasn't Super Laser Tech or Resupply. If it did not have either of those cards, that card was going back no matter what else was in it. I would keep a hand if it had one of those cards, and then nothing else was even relevant, because the only thing I felt like mattered was who was ramping more. No amount of 1/4s were going to win this matchup. I wasn't even keeping them in my hand. I would just pass turn 1. I just did not want to play them. Inferno 4 was really the only turn 1 play I was cool playing, just because the filtering would help like set up future turns. Other than that, did not want to play them because Regional Governor also was not something I wanted to play early. That was something you play late, which often is how you win, right? Like I knew my opponent in one game had a Super Laser Blast because I saw his hand with a Viper Probe. We got into like our end game. We have a lot of resource stuff, and I was able to go like big ship, Regional Governor, Super Laser Blast, and that kind of like lets you push a bunch of damage. So Governor is really important there, but it's not something you want to throw out early. Yeah, so that's how I like really fought in those mirrors. It's just really about getting to your end game quicker, ideally, and then amassing a bunch of resources. So you want to keep resourcing in these matchups for a really long time because you want to be able to play multiple cards on these big turns. Like, it's not great when you're at 10 and you play Avenger and you can't play anything else. You want to be able to play other cards to like maybe insulate you from their Avenger afterwards, right? So that you can play a 2-drop next to it. Same with like the Relentless, right? Just slamming Relentless and nothing else, maybe it guarantees you 8 damage, but they'll might be able to churn something. But if you can Relentless and follow up with, again, something to block an Avenger, or a way to be able to like counter a Devastator play after they Devastator your Relentless, it's important. I cut the Vigilance in these matchups. They're not about milling. There is an off chance in game 1 that it can work because both decks tend to have less top end. So if you're going to, if you like answer, like you kill a Reinforcement Walker, you kill an Avenger, they kill some of yours, you now know that there's just not that much top end left in these decks. That's when maybe Vigilance can help. In game 2 and 3, it's not going to happen. You're going to lose if you're paying 6 to mill. The heal is also not particularly relevant. So those went out, and the Star Vipers went out. They're not very good here. And then I brought in all the big stuff. You can actually play a little extra than 50 in these matchups, just not for the milling, just because it's not terrible to actually draw some bad cards, because if you have a handful of good cards and you still need to be resourcing, it means you have to resource a good card, right? And you don't want to do that. Like, you never want to resource Evader, Walker, Avenger, Relentless, Devastator, Super Laser Blast, Power of the Dark Side. You don't want to resource any of these cards, but you actually need to be resourcing. So having a few extra cards means you do dilute a little bit. And I opted to go up in game 2 a couple times, but actually didn't love it in the Krennic mirror specifically, because it's all about ramp. So, you know, if you dilute your deck there, but against the hard control decks, I'm more likely to go up a few cards, because I'm not as like I have to ramp there, because I feel like the game is going to go very long kind of regardless. So having just some chaff to resource was a decently helpful in against like the Boba Blue, for instance. I think I went up like 2 cards over the 50. It's not like I'm putting my entire sideboard in. This is not about making their Vigilance mill plan worse. It's just about having more cards in your deck, which means you will draw more cards that you feel comfortable resourcing, because again, you never want to resource your finishers. I don't have much else to say here. I think this deck is favored into Boba. If you play tight, Boba can steal games against anyone, both the green and the mono yellow version, but you have the right tools here. You have clean answers to all their threats. If you are able to get past that absurd mid game that they have, it's very hard for them to ever finish you off. And 7th Fleet Defender is the most obnoxious card in that deck, and there is potentially a reason to be playing making openings in the main deck, potentially even over the takedowns, just because of that. All right, so that's what I got about the deck. As a little bonus, a couple people from the top 8 sent me their deck lists with an image, so I was just going to put that up now. This is the runner-up, the Boba Blue, piloted by Getsu. Just going to put this up for a second. You could pause, take a look. I'm not going to talk about his deck in particular. Just wanted to put it up there. And the next one was the 4th seed Han Green. This is one that I played in the Swiss. He got bounced by the mono blue Krennic, I believe, in the top 8. But this was his list. So yeah, take a look. There's some cool stuff in there. All right, that's all I got. This was an awesome tournament. I'm happy I was able to take it down. And definitely going to check out that store again, Red Seal Gaming. It's a great place to play. If you don't mind, subscribe to the channel. If you like the video, press that like button. And till next time, take care.